I'm bored. Let's read a book. Oh! The next morning, which was ushered in the bright sunshine and cold gusty winds, Justin again appeared to be not quite youthful gray wizard. Up and saddling Rosefoot while I was still rolling my bedroll and trying to wash and shave in the icy brook water, the fallen leaves from the bush around the brook no longer crunched underfoot, but neither was it warm enough for there to be the moldering smell of spring. Cleaner was definitely colder than having a dirty face and hands, but I swore that Justin hadn't winced when he washed. Did Grey Wizard use their powers to heat cold water? Probably. But if it were a chaos power, I'd forego hot water through magic. The feeling of chaos isolation was way too recent. I wiped off my trousers and cloak as well as I could, wondering how Justin's light gray clothes always looked so good. My own darker garb was beginning to look ratty. Then again, I wasn't certain I really wanted to know. Gerlach pawed at the ground as if to indicate his readiness to take the road, and that he'd had enough of old grass and greaseberry leaves. So I strapped on my bedroll and pack and climbed into the old saddle. How far is it to Weevil, or whatever it is? Weave it. We should be there before midday, depending on the road. Justin rode easily, not really using the reins nor lurching in the saddle the way I still did. With the wind coming at us from the west, I could already smell the faintest hint of wood smoke, and over the low hills before us rose only a single thin plume of twisted white or grayish smoke. The valleys were either cleared for pasture or were natural meadows, with no sign of crop fields or orchards. Before we had gone much more than a k, we passed a rude hut set back from the road, and on the right surrounded with a split-rail fence, behind which milled a few logs. Someone in shapeless leathers was pouring water into a long trough. Beyond the fence grazed several dozen sheep. Why did we leave Montagan? Actually, we haven't. The Countess holds Friven, but that doesn't really count. Nobody wants that land. The border between Montgrin and Curtis is on the other side of Weave-It. More guards, I supposed. No guard posts, just 2 stone pillars. The Countess is a realist. She just hangs or shoots those who displease her, the ones her few soldiers catch. They don't catch too many, since most of her modest guard is at Vergren. Vergren was somewhere generally northwest of us, according to the maps I have studied. I hadn't traveled all that far, and I was about to enter the Third Kingdom, or Duchy, or whatever. Are they as small as Montgrin? Justin shook his head. Some are, like Freetown. Hydeland, Gallos stretch over 300 k's north and south. Kyphros is bigger, and it's the only duchy that actually would qualify as a true kingdom. That has bothered the perfect Gallos ever since the previous autarch carved out the realm for the surrounding kingdoms. The name of Gallos and Kyphros was familiar, but that was about all. There was something else about Kyphros, but I didn't really recall what at the moment. We rode past the second rough hut, this time on the south of the road, again with the split log fence enclosing another wooden trough, and black-faced sheep indistinguishable from those behind the fence on the north side of the road. The tops of the gentle hills contain ample trees to supply the rails for the fences, as well as logs in numbers far greater than necessary for the few buildings likely to be found in Weave-It or those in Howlet. Even Vergren, the smallest capital in Kandar, famed only for the diversity in its wool products, would not have made a dent in the lumber that could have been taken from the height of the hills, especially since a fair number of their trees are red or black oak. In time, as we rode, the huts appeared more frequently, changing from a little more than log hovels into rough planked houses with thatched roofs. By now the sun stood high and white in the sky, but the ground remained as frozen as ever. While my breath no longer resembled steam in the chill air, I alternated placing my ungloved hands under my tunic to warm them. Justin rode with his cloak open, without gloves, and without any sign of discomfort. My buttocks were sore, my hands chapped and chill, and my legs threatened to cramp, even with the repeated standing in the stirrups to stretch them. As we traveled down another of the unending gentle hills, the packed red clay road merged, over a K or so, into a packed sand and pebble surface frozen in shallow ruts. Gerlach's hoof clicked on the small stone rocks, and I worried about his catching a stone in a hoof. The roadside lands before the winter stubble of the maize and the turned soil of the recovered root crops, the farmhouses came closer together. In time we descended toward a small river, the first I had seen larger than a stream since I had landed in Freetown. Though the river was surrounded by some low brush, I could see no trees along the stream bed either to the north or the south. Where the road flattened near the bottom of the hill, it also straightened and ran like an arrow to the ancient stone bridge across the river. "The bridge marks the end of Weave-It," observed Justin. "Is that important?" I was bored with the same-looking huts and houses, with the sullen people who looked away from us, and with the rolling gray and brown of hill valley after hill valley. Sheep after identical and smelly sheep. "In a way," answered the Grey Wizard, "since the Countess's soldiers do not have the right of summary justice within the towns of Montgren." Summary justice? And then I nearly winced. Justin kept reminding me of how little I knew, and how many pitfalls Kandar possessed. Even before we crossed the bridge into Weave-It, the rank odor of concentrated sheep and wool wafted from the west to greet us. That, combined with another ill-defined rancidity, which I did not ask Justin to explain, turned my travel-bred breakfast into a leaden mass squarely in the middle of my guts. I winced at the burp, but Justin didn't even smile. He was guiding Rosefoot around a small wagon pulled by a mule. A woman in shapeless herder's gray trudged beside the mule, edging toward the animal. She heard us, but not looking up, not even as Rosefoot delicately stepped around her. That from the mule as greetings when we resumed the center of the road just before the bridge. Beginning perhaps half a K beyond the bridge, cottages clustered together on both sides of the way. "We're expected at the Weaver's Inn." "Expected?" Justin smiled a thin smile and shook his head. "Laris, contrary to what you must believe, Grey Wizards do not roam the landscape and travel aimlessly from point to point. Like everyone else, we have to make a living." "And Weave-It?" "Just so." He reseated himself in the saddle as Gerlach's hooves struck the granite paving stones of the bridge. "May I ask what your commission is here?" "Oh, so delicately put." Justin laughed. He actually laughed, if only for a moment. "I don't believe in glamour, just in a good job and money. Some years ago I struck a bargain with the Counts of Montegrin. He wanted his duchy to be prosperous and famed for something, and I wanted a more secure income. I made a proposal, and he nearly threw me out. Then he thought better of it, but I raised the price. After all, even Grey Wizards have some dignity. That's why we're here." "You haven't told me anything," I noted. "The sheep," Justin added. "Famous sheep and wool of Montgren." "I know they're famous, even in some weavers and some of the weavers I know. Praise the wool." "Are you saying you have something to do with that?" "Immodestly, yes. That is why we are here." I shook my head. "Since you are here, you can help." I didn't like the sound of that at all, but I owed Justin. How? Don't worry, it's a menial job, but one purely of order. I waited. Healthy sheep bear healthy lambs and good wool. Each year I check the ewes and breeding rams to ensure that only the healthy ones are bred. He explained. This means 4 visits to Montgren, and it takes several days. In the fall, I check the lambs as well. It couldn't be that simple, but I knew little enough to question. I remained silent and let Gerlach follow Rosefoot. The stone-paved streets of Weavet were narrow, though the cottages were fenced and set far back from the main ways. The town layout was simple. 2 main streets, on one north, one south, one east-west, met at the central square. There were no more than 24 other streets, half of which went north and south, half east, west, creating a grid pattern. On the south side of the town I could see over the low one-story cottages what appeared to be warehouses or large workshops. Carting houses, Justin said curtly. For wool, he added even more curtly. I shrugged. The Grey Wizard's mind was clearly somewhere else, so I studied the town itself, noting the plank houses where the painted and open shutters, colored gravel walks, trimmed waist-high hedges, and now empty flower beds and flower boxes. Compared to Hrisbarger Hulett, Weavet is indeed an ordered place. In the center of the square was a stone pedestal bearing the statue of a man on a horse. Carved into the supporting statue were the recurring shapes of sheep. Around the pedestal was a winter-brown lawn, except on the north side, right under the pedestal, where rested a small pile of dirty snow. A low stone wall and a raised walk outside this wall separated the green from the pavement. Around the central square were arranged 6 well-kept stores, dry goods, a woodcrafter, a produce market, a butcher, a leather goods shop, a bakery, and the Weaver's Inn, which from the outside appeared nearly as ordered as the Traveller's Rest Inn has been. Across the square from the inn was a 2-story stone building, with a flagstaff which flew a blue and gold banner. On the blue triangular lower section was a golden coronet, while the upper gold section bore a black ram. Although a good score of people walked to and from the shops and stores on the east and west sides of the square, no one neared the stone building on the north side. A single wagon waited in front of the leather goods store. Justin Rosefoot headed straight for the equally orderly stable behind the Weaver's Inn, going down a narrow paved alley beside the tan-painted plank of the 2-story inn. "Sir Wizard," the stable boy greeted him. Justin nodded, flashed a brief smile, and dismounted. "Are you a wizard too?" asked the toad. "I am what I am," I forced a laugh. Justin ignored us both uncharacteristically and unfastened his saddlebags with quick, deft motions. By the time I helped the younger ostler settle both ponies in clean, adjacent stalls in the airy stable, Justin had disappeared, assuming he had gone to the inn. I followed him and, talking to a man, presumably the innkeeper. "This is Lyris, my assistant this time." The innkeeper nodded politely, the pointed ends of his bushy mustache hardly moving at all. "The room next to yours is his." That stopped me. No questions, no problems, just mine. The innkeeper glanced briefly at me as I stood there holding my saddlebags up pack, then turned back to Justin. "I thought you might bring help." Justin nodded in return, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. "Would you like some dinner?" As soon as we... Yes, follow me. Up the clean and well-varnished white oak stairs we went, and down a wide hallway. We had the 2 corner rooms, or rather, I had a nice room with a real bed, dresser, mirror, and a wash table. Justin had a suite, or at least a bedroom and a sitting room. Since the Grey Wizard wanted to be left alone, I went to my own room, washed up, and then headed downstairs to fill my quite empty stomach. The only problem with the inn was that although it was clean, somehow it still smelled faintly of sheep and wool. Did all Weebit echo the animals? The innkeeper led me to the corner stable, warmed by a low fire and set with actual utensils and glass goblets. By the time Justin arrived, I was drinking red berry and working my way through cheese and mutton pie, brought by a pleasant-faced, if heavy-set girl who resembled the innkeeper too much for coincidence. Justin said nothing of a conversational nature until he had sipped a golden wine I did not recognize, and munched through a slice of black bread and a hard, pungent white cheese. Between bites he gazed into a space I could not see. "You'll learn that room tomorrow. Is that when we start work?" He nodded. I had questions, but the Grey Wizard wasn't exactly encouraging them, and I was still hungry. So I ate, and Justin nibbled at his bread and cheese. But there was one question that kept nagging me, so I asked, "You said about the magicians built the town center of Friven, as if that explained something." Justin smiled faintly. "It's not properly a question, but I understand the import." He took a sip of the golden wine. "The older wizards of Fairhaven understood that chaos cannot build structures which last." "What about the roads?" "The roads are not quite the same thing. Chaos is quite efficient at removing rock and stone, as long as it does not touch what remains. The roadbed is as solid as one stone which is left, and the few black wizards used order mastery. After the stonemasons built the retaining walls and drains, but that was before." He shook his head. "Sometimes I wander too much. You asked about building. Stonecutters build better than chaos masters. The old town center at Fairhaven proves that." I still didn't have the answer of what I wanted, but Justin was staring into space, as if I had called him back into the past. So instead, I finished my mutton pie and let him stare. "Your meal is paid for," the Grey Wizard said sometime later as I finished a red berry pastry. He stood up, pushing back the spoke-arm chair, and nodded. "I'll see you at dawn." I nodded with a full mouth. But he was gone before I could swallow. There wasn't much else to do except finish stuffing myself. Then I rose and walked out into the late afternoon, wrapping my brown cloak around me. Fewer souls were visible in the square, but that might have been because of the thickening gray clouds and a few wispy flakes of snow that drifted across the stones with the gray winds. In time, I retreated back to my room and lit the oil lamp. With a sigh, I recovered the basis of order and opened it again. It was still boring. Or I was tired. Or both. And I turned out the lamp and climbed onto the bed for a nap. When I awoke again, it was pitch dark, with only a single street lamp visible through the window. I ignored the growling in my stomach and pulled off my clothes as I climbed under the coverlet. Falling asleep was still easy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of these videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!